following program is classified G. It's suitable for all ages. We would like to remind our viewers that the views expressed in this program by our participating guests are solely viewpoints of them who take part and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. This is an opinion-based program.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Get Real, Monday's edition, where we try to discuss issues that facing you and me on a daily basis. Well, today is one of the biggest conversations that's out there. In case you managed to watch our news program last night, State of the Nation, we've been talking about the economy, trying to understand what's going on in Sri Lanka, all over the world, and more importantly, how that is impacting you at home. I understand there is a lot of conversation with regard to prices, grocery prices, normal prices of day-to-day services that you take. There are lots of conversations about it is sky high than the economy per se. Trying to get an understanding where we are as a nation, and more importantly, where are we going? So that's the conversation we need to have tonight. And I have one of the, I think I can say a person who has one of the toughest jobs at the moment, the governor of the central bank, Governor Ajith Nivaard Cabraal. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
All the best for the new year, sir.
Thank you, Mahieash.
Well, let me start off. The economic conditions in Sri Lanka, painted by every single media institution and every single pundit in all across the world, says it's bleak, it's worrisome. Even these rating agencies gave us a Christmas present and a New Year present per se, saying downgrading. What's the real picture? Because you're sitting at the position where you have to fix this. This is pretty much your job. You have to fix the economy. We have to fix what is wrong with it. So what's the condition right now? Is it bleak as they say it is?
Let me put it this way, Mahieash. The conditions are not the most favorable, I admit. But at the same time, if you deal with it and you take the necessary steps to ensure that you are able to turn around, that is the most important thing. We have faced even tougher times. Yeah. I remember during the time of the global financial crisis, as well as our own war, banks were collapsing. We did face some tough times. But from every such situation, we emerged well because we took the necessary steps. We were bold enough to take certain steps and we went through with it. And that is what it's all about. So I'm not saying this is an easy time, as you quite rightly mentioned. It is tough times. It is not only tough for us, it's tough all over the world. The US is saying that they are experiencing the highest ever inflation that they've had in 40 years. So is Britain, so is Europe. So there are countries that have got so many different problems. 123 countries have been downgraded so far. Now with all that, we have been able to keep our heads afloat. We have been going forward. We will probably have a growth higher than 5% this year, which is an extraordinary number, but we are working towards that. And it's very likely that we will be able to achieve that, provided we get our rest of the building blocks in place. Now that's why we had to fix our external sector, which is under some kind of challenge. As you know, the remittances that have come in have reduced a bit. We have also seen the tourism reducing quite substantially.
But both are picking up now.
Both are picking up, certainly. So that's why if you just wait, nothing will happen. But if you are able to take the necessary steps to deal with it and then make sure that it is rising, then we have confidence. Then with that confidence, we can approach our lenders. We have been able to get our loans rolled over. Some loans we have had to pay, particularly the international sovereign bonds, and we have paid it because we took the view that it is important that we settle some of those so that we shrink our overall international sovereign bond debt.
You're going to pay another installment tomorrow on 18th, $500 million. I want to get into the nitty-gritties of that and how exactly are you managing that. One of the things that countries, like before we get into all the deep conversation about this, I want to get your reaction to what Fitch Ratings did. What I don't understand, I'm a layman, I'm not an economist, so what I don't understand is in order for our economy to be better, we have to do business. In order for our foreign direct investment to be better, we need investors from foreign countries to come here and invest their money. This is the simple logic that I understand. Now, an organization, Fitch Ratings, Standard & Poor's, they come and say, oh, this country is bad to do business. How are we going to get, I mean, we are down the gutter and they are still kicking us. What is your response to these organizations? Because you have clearly set up, we are paying the 500 million. We have never defaulted. This country has done very well in terms of, keeping our promises to the world. We've done all of that. We have a good project coming in. The Port City project is slowly picking up. We have other investments occurring. Major countries are very interested in Sri Lanka and they want to come in. All this is happening. But apparently, these two nonsense organizations is not getting it. Are they getting educated in a different college or something?
Actually, you are very right, Mahieash. Now, if you really look at it, we have been first told that many people, the so-called pundits that you referred to at the beginning, they said Sri Lanka will be never able to pay this debt because their reserves are falling.
Yes, I remember.
And that we won't have the money. If you go through some of your clips,
yes,
I'm sure you'll see plenty of those. Then what happened was, we diligently accumulated our reserves, and we also said that by the 31st of December, 2021, we will have at least $3 billion in the kitty. We did that.
You did that, yeah.
We did that. And once we did that, I think some of these pundits were quite alarmed that we will definitely pay the debt. And then what did they come and say? Notwithstanding the fact that they have been saying right along that all hell will break loose if we don't pay, now they come back, and I was surprised to see some of the names there, they come back and say, hey, don't pay this. Now, I just couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that supplement where it said a series of people, some supposedly quite...
I know, the key members of this opposition.
And they're saying don't pay it. And they themselves have been saying what kind of a catastrophe would occur if we don't. Now, we leave that aside, but now we are going to pay that, and we are also ensuring that all the debts in the future are also paid. I brought a little chart. Normally I don't, Mahieash, but I thought I'll bring this today because I wanted to show this to you. Now, when we took office, at least when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa took office, he had reserves of $7,642 million. Now, that was a reserve.
This was
on the
after
19th
winning the war, after going through all that, and by 2015, 4-5 years down the line, we had that.
Yes. Now, this was, now when I left the central bank in 2014 end, it was $8,204 million. However, even after borrowing $12 billion, the previous governors and the previous government could leave only $7,642 million in the kitty for us. Now, with that, we have been managing, and mind you, we have settled something like $12,443 million so far. So, from a reserve of 7,642, you cannot settle 12,443 unless you have been able to do something to bring inflows in. Now, what my point is very clearly that we have been bringing the inflows in, and that is why we have been able to make these payments. So now, even at the end of 2021, we have had a reserve of $3,138 million, and we are gradually increasing that. Now, just a few days ago, you saw how we have negotiated with the Indian government to have a swap facility as well as ACU facility, both of which is about $900 million. Next week or the week after, we'll probably have another $500 million.
Governor, what exactly does this mean when it comes to currency swap? Now, this is a new term that is coming into the conversation. Earlier on, it was the Chinese debt. and then during the election time, and then it slowly transferred into debt. Now everybody was talking about debt, and suddenly we see currency swap. Now I am speaking from a point of a layman who does not understand any of this, and he she hears currency swap. What exactly does this
currency
mean?
swap is actually a form of a facility that is generally done between two central banks in this particular context. Of course, you can do swaps with others as well, but in this context of what we are talking now, Mahieash, it is where the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, let's say to the Reserve Bank of India, we provide them with rupees to the value of $400 million. So that $400 million worth of rupees at the current exchange rate is provided to the Reserve Bank of India, and in turn the Reserve Bank of India is giving us $400 million. Now the security, if it were, for this particular $400 million is a rupee deposit that we are making with them, and they make a deposit of $400 million with us. So it's a swap between.
So this is not a loan.
It is a form of a loan, but this is a loan where we have also given them a loan. You see, if you see, as I mentioned at the beginning, we give them a loan of the equivalent of $400 million in rupees, which they hold with them. They give us the equivalent of $400 million in dollar terms, and that's an exchange of these funds.
So that particular amount does not go and calculate into our overall high debt, does it?
This is a facility that the central bank has received. Sorry. And this is a facility that we have negotiated with the Central Bank of India,
so
which is called the
Central Bank.
Central Bank to Central Bank. So this particular swap provides us with liquidity in dollar terms. So instead of having rupee liquidity, we have dollar liquidity, and we can take it into our international reserve, which means that we can show the world that we have this amount of facilities, this amount of dollars in our kitty to be able to ensure that our transactions can be done seamlessly. Now that is very helpful, because we did have a situation where the reserves were down to some extent, and I remember many people thought it will never go up again. But now people are beginning to see that all our projections are now bearing fruit one by one. So very, very soon you will find that what we have stated out, that certain swaps will materialize from certain other countries as well as certain other reserve banks will also materialize. Some other securitization of certain other loans also will materialize. So overall, what we are doing is two things. One is we are making sure that the loans that are due are paid, so that our creditors are not put into any turmoil. We are not bringing the house down, as it were, because we have not paid the debts, so we are settling that. And secondly, we are ensuring that we have sufficient reserves, which people can see then Sri Lanka is moving onto the path of greater stability. Externally, we did have some challenges. We have to understand that and appreciate that. When you don't have tourism receipts for 2 years, mind you, which normally used to give us about $4.5 billion a year, you have a gap of about $9 billion. So now that $9 billion also has to be met. We have to make sure that the loans that were taken in the past are also repaid. We have to make sure that there are sufficient dollars provided to the market for the liquidity to ensure that there is oil, that there is gas, that there is medicines, and all those essentials are taken care of. So now that was the challenge that we encountered, and we have so far ensured that the challenge has been met. And going forward, I would ask people to also not get panicked, and that they would know that we are making sure that all these things are done.
Minister of Energy made a statement publicly saying that he wanted to, I think, around $200 million in order to buy fuel or to get fuel, and apparently the central bank was not giving him money, or the finance ministry actually was not giving him money. What is the situation? Because apparently fuel is something that is going to dictate pretty much all the prices in Sri Lanka, all the commodity prices in Sri Lanka. Are we in a position where there could be a fuel crisis in the future due to the simple fact that we don't have money to pay for fuel in order to get it? What kind of mechanisms have you all put in place in order to address that?
I want to make one statement very clear here, Mahieash. Even during the time that we were fighting the war, there were certain dates on which we didn't have certain weapons. But did we come and tell the world we don't have weapons? There were certain days when we did have some shortage of cash as well, in order to buy weapons as well as other ammunition. But we didn't come and shout and scream about it. These are internal matters that we need to deal with. So I think if we had told the world at that time that we have no weapons, what do you think the enemy would have done?
Hammered us even bad.
Absolutely. So I think there are in some instances when you are managing a difficult situation, we don't need to aggravate it by making regular statements on a day-by-day basis. We got to deal with it. We are dealing with it. And we have made sure that all the money that is required for the oil has been paid. We have had some difficulties because we have had to make two payments due to the fact that certain statements were made that we don't have money. Some of the suppliers have asked for us to pay money in advance. Now that was totally unfortunate, because if those statements were not made, we could have probably have paid those bills after 180 days. Now, be that it may, we still have not defaulted. We still have made sure that the oil requirements are met. That has been a challenge, I admit, but at the same time, going forward into the future, most of the suppliers themselves would probably realize that Sri Lanka is making sure that the payments are being made, and it will be made. So I think the way to go is for us to put together our own heads and make sure that we deal with these situations, and not every time come and talk about it to every microphone that we can look at.
Governor, you have the central bank per se has taken very stringent decisions in terms of ensuring that our monetary policies are taken in such a manner. It is tough at the moment, because all the luxuries we used to have prior to COVID is no longer available. I'm talking about the importation of vehicles, and then there is a whole list of items which the importation has been curbed at the moment because it is not essential, and that is understandable. But then again, you also understand the human mind works as such. No longer you put some kind of restrictions, they always want to break away, and up until the time you get that, nobody's going to be happy. And that is the only problem. Even if there is no bread to eat, they will say it is because you stop the importation of the vehicles. So what exactly are you saying now? These restrictions, what is the time frame that you're looking at? Are you looking at in 5 years, 10 years? What exactly is this?
It's a very interesting question. Now you know that we had put a stop to the vehicle imports. But even with the stoppage of the vehicle imports, the total imports in 2021 was higher than the imports in 2020, and only marginally lower than that of 2019. So you can see, without a large part of importation of vehicles, we still have been importing quite a lot. And if you look at some of those numbers, and I think the central bank figures have been now already released, you would find that there have been some extraordinary importation of so many non-essentials that is quite evident from those numbers. So my point is that yes, we need to have some restraint, perhaps by ourselves, because if we don't do that, I think it's going to put additional burden and pressure on the economy. Now if you take, now I went to Kandy 2 days ago, the roads were chock-a-block. The petrol prices increase haven't in any way dampened the travel, and travel was at its highest. It took 4.5 hours just to get to Kandy. I'm thankful that the new highway is going to be done. Yeah. But it shows that people haven't in any way reduced their consumption. So I think it is time for us to also examine our own ways of handling our day-to-day life, and some essentials that we can reduce in our usage, we should reduce. Some non-essentials we don't need to import and use, and have some restraint by ourselves as well.
What I want to understand, Governor, is when you put restrictions as such, it is pushing the market prices within Sri Lanka to skyrocket to levels it is you can't even justify it. Vehicles are at double the rate at the moment, in certain instances triple the rate. Mobile phones are high. These services that we used to do and we used to get is no longer the same prices. So, but Sri Lankans are requested to pay for a high amount. Do you think this will persist a very longer period of time, or you see some light at the end of the tunnel?
I think some of the traders themselves are making a quick kill as well. If you take the mobile telephones, the importation of mobile telephones haven't been stopped at all. The total mobile phone importation was 42% higher in 2021 than that of 2020, and even higher than that of 2019. So it shows that there has been no curtailment whatsoever, and there is no way in which people need to have so many mobile phones, but yet I don't know what the reason is. You see that happening. Now, in the case of vehicles, yes, I know it has gone up unduly, and I believe that we need to deal with it. There has been a recommendation that has been made that we should allow some of the vehicles to be imported if the importation is done with foreign currency, and also if the duty is paid in foreign currency. Now, that would also bring in additional duty into the country, and additional duty as a revenue into the country, as well as additional foreign exchange. So I think we need to explore that kind of policy package as well, because that would help us to ease the burden of the people who are waiting to buy vehicles, and I think it's an important part of the total package that people generally are keen to have with them.
Yeah, I mean, it talks to the quality of life that one live in a certain country, because I'm sure everything what you are doing, we are not trying to be like what the opposition say. We are like trying to be like Zimbabwe or some other country which has completely gone down the gutter, because that's what they are trying to do with certain stringent measures. And it is also vital, Governor, that people like you come regularly and explain to the public, because sooner that you all don't do that, the other elements which wants to capitalize on that opportunity takes precedent, and that's what we are seeing right now. We are rather clearing a mess than taking control. Let's take a short commercial break. You're watching Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank, Mr. Ajith Nivaard Cabraal. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank, Ajith Nivaard Cabraal. Governor, we've been talking about what exactly you all are doing in order to face the issues that we have. I think one of the best things that you said during this conversation is, it's not about not having problems. Everybody has problems, but what are you doing about it is what matters. And that is something that people of this country needs to understand. One more thing that people are being pushed and fueled to think is that when they say, we've taken a loan from China for 500 million or from the United States, but they think that next month we have to pay back the whole thing, 500 million, even if you take a loan from a bank, that is not how it is being repaid. So, Governor, I want to talk about the issues that the opposition is raising. The noisemakers, in my opinion, the jokers. But so one of the things they're saying is that, especially the people who were running the economy at that time, or the so-called doctors and professors, they're saying is apparently you don't have any money. You're printing like nothing, printing money left, right, and center, and there is no structural plan. There is no proper plan in order to pay back these loans and everything. Yeah, just for superficial stuff, they're just coming in front of the cameras and saying this and that and all that nonsense, but there's no money in the coffers. What's your response to that?
As I mentioned very clearly, every single debt has been paid. We have made sure that all the essentials imports are done. We have also made sure that the investments are made. Just a few days ago, the highway was open. Yeah. Did it happen from nowhere? How did it happen? Somebody had to invest all the money. Then we are doing 100,000 kilometers of road. Does that come out from nowhere? No, there is money being invested. Then we have seen all the companies. Take the top companies listed in the stock exchange. If you look at it, you will find that every single one of them have been doing better. Yeah. So what does that mean? Is that a sign of a deteriorating economy? Is that a sign of a crashing economy? No. It shows very clearly that we are seeing growth as well. In fact, we are envisaging a growth of about 5% this year. Now, in order to do that, we have to also see that the sentiments are not disturbed. Now, that is what the opposition is doing regularly. They are coming and preaching a mantra that we won't be able to settle the debt, we won't be able to do this, we won't be able to have investment. Now, when you do that, what it does is it sends vibrations all over the world that things are difficult in Sri Lanka. Now, that is exactly what we shouldn't have. We should have the people who are doing business also talking about the good things. How many things are happening which are of positive nature? Now, those, if you talk about it, look at the stock exchange, look at the interest rates that we have been able to manage so long. Look at the exchange rate, whatever anyone may have said, we have seen that the exchange rate is managed and $60 billion of transactions are performed at that exchange rate of 200 or so. Maybe $2 billion of transactions are being done at 230 or 240 rupees. But that is a total aberration. But the bulk of the transactions that take place in this country are taking place at that price. And if you do it that way, you will find that the country is getting much more stable. Going forward, Mahieash, you can be sure that we will be able to ensure that the external account becomes a lot more stable. The fiscal side is a little tough these days because the revenues haven't still begun to come in because the lockdown was now released, and little by little you can see that the economic activity is taking shape. When the economic activity takes place, the imports take place, then the revenue start coming with income taxes, with customs duties, with excise duties, you will find that the government will be able to manage that part of the equation also much better. The real growth is also important. As you quite rightly mentioned, the Port City Act is now in place. You can see a lot of activity taking place there. And you would find that as time goes on, new investments also will start coming. Advanis are investing $700 million. It's not a small number. $700 million is for the port Western terminal. Yeah. The tire company in Hambantota Port Industrial Park is a $300 million investment. Now these
pharmaceutical investments.
Investments are coming. Now these are not pie in the sky. These are on the ground. You are seeing these investments taking shape. Now, if those also take shape, and then the growth momentum is spurred by that, you would find that Sri Lanka will have a journey which is quite a positive journey. Now, we have to make sure that we support that. Now, in order to support it, we have to see that the sentiment of the business people, the sentiment of outside people who are feeding tourists are also maintained. Yeah. Now that's the challenge for us, and I think, as you quite rightly mentioned, one of the reasons why I also decided that I must come out and talk about these matters is because unless we do that, you find that the noise out there, as you mentioned very correctly, can sometimes drown the good things that are happening in the country as well.
That is exactly what I mean. It's not only you guys. I think every single citizen in this country, if you're living in Sri Lanka and if you call yourself a Sri Lankan, then scream from the top of the mountains about the good things that's occurring here. I mean, if we look at social media and the younger generation, bullshit is what's going on because they're not educated enough. Somebody is bullshitting them, and we all know who that is, and they are just buying in because apparently fashionable to be, criticizing the government, criticizing and appreciating whatever the Western people, shit on. I'm sorry for these language that I'm using, but apparently that's the reality out there. So we really need to rethink about.
I'll give you one little tip on that. Now, at the central bank, we have about 25 PhDs. We have about 350 people who are masters. We have about 180 professionals. Now, these people didn't suddenly fall from the sky. They also know some of what they're doing very well. And we are being guided by their actions, their advice, and so on. Now, it's very easy for someone to refer a particular item on Google and say, this is the way it will work. Now, I have seen that happening lots of times. That's why I want to caution everyone here, Mahieash, that not to be misled by these Facebook economists.
I mean, you waste your time most of the instances responding saying this is not true, that is not true.
So
I mean, it's such a waste of your time.
Absolutely. So sometimes you need to do that, because if you don't send a denial, the next post will be, we asked the governor, but he had no response.
Exactly.
You know? So now, to that extent, you put pressure on the economy. Now, that is what we should avoid, because we should get all the people who are moving in this direction to take these steps to make sure that the country gets into the right frame.
Governor, I have a theory. So we hear, from about 2, 3, 4, 5 months back, we hear the opposition's favorite word to chant is IMF. Go to the IMF, go to the IMF, go to the IMF. And then we see that occurring for some time, and the government has categorically said no IMF. We are not even going in or citing their place. That was occurring. And then we saw organizations like Fitch Ratings downgrading us, and then Standard & Poor's downgrading us. Now, these are organizations who are attributing to the bigger chunk of things, the World Bank, the IMF, all these global bodies. So it is pretty much telling everybody, okay, if you do not go to the IMF, this is what we are going to do. I have a theory, if by any chance, if you go to the IMF today, tomorrow, all these organizations will start appreciating and putting our status of our country right up there. What's the real reason that you don't want to go to the IMF?
See, we have made sure that our debts are settled. We have put in place an investment regime which is very clear, and that we can draw investment into the country. We have been able to roll over our debt without any difficulty at the current prices. Now, that is not a reflection of a country in distress. Yes, we do have challenges, but we are not in distress. So what some of these people are trying to make out, Mahieash, is that we are in distress. They are asking us to send a signal out saying Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Yes.
But if your ship is not in distress and you send a signal out like that, you can be penalized, because you are not supposed to do that. Now, we have to make sure that we stabilize the situation and then we go forward. And the plan that we have put together, although the previous government never had a plan about what they were going to do, as soon as I came in as governor once again, the first thing that I did was to set out a plan with the help of all the experts at the central bank. We articulated it, we put it out into the world so that people know what exactly we are doing, and we are monitoring it as well as implementing it with diligence. Now, that is what you call a plan which is being activated. Now, even if you go to the IMF, what will they do? They'll ask you to do a plan. Then they'll ask you to do certain things which we ourselves are doing right now. And they will also, at this stage, the reason why people are saying go to the IMF is to restructure our debt. Now, what they mean by restructure is to say, inflict pain on your creditors, get them to take a haircut, do all kinds of things like that. Now, what we are saying is quite different to that. What we are saying is, we will make sure that our creditors are not burdened with a haircut. We don't want that to happen, because we have the resources to be able to pay that. So what we are doing is, we are getting some funds from elsewhere, making sure that these are paid for. We are also ensuring that certain non-debt creating inflows are supported. We are seeing that our remittances will be supported, although it has dropped to some extent. We will support that and ensure that the payments are made. So if the payments are made, what's the problem that people are having? What's the problem for these guys to say go to the IMF? Now, because if you go to the IMF as well, and then they give you a prescription, and many countries have had that prescription, and that prescription has generally led to the failure of governments and the governments to fall, perhaps that's one of the reasons why they want that to happen, is to say, okay, cut down on government expenditure, which is a good thing. But if they insist that you cut down on the totality of your workforce of the government and cut down on the pensions. And pension reform has taken place in many countries, whereas when the pensioners are given 50% of the pensions that they were drawing, that kind of a reform has taken place in many countries. If that happens, normally that is accompanied with riots as well as mayhem. Now, if that happens, the country gets into a state of anarchy.
Then only
these guys will realize what kind of a burden that has happened.
And they will never have any kind of accountability towards us.
Absolutely not.
I mean, if they screw up whatever they propose and we do it, and there's no accountability.
Absolutely. In fact, I have told one or two of these people who have given these prescriptions, I have said, you will write in your CV that you were the advisor at the time the Sri Lankan program was developed. But nobody will ask you whether that was successful or not. If that had been successful, well and good. If it had not been successful and that country has gone down into the tube, whichever country that they have given advice to, then nothing would have emanated from that. But for us, we are here.
Yeah.
We are the guys who are going to be involved in the implementation of that. And that's why we are very keen to see that we implement proper plans that will give permanent solutions.
Sri Lanka is a country that gives away lots of free stuff, whether it's education, healthcare, now the vaccine process, which is I think a huge amount that is being injected to the economy. Do you think, is this a sign of a growing economy where you continuously give free stuff and people also expect free stuff? If it rains and water comes and hits your feet, or floods give us aid, that kind of mentality is what is going on. It doesn't seem to be picking up, because everything, even recently I saw some clown who was doing a video he was going in front of the one golf's place and blaming, saying you all have sold this to China, sold that to this, are you all selling the parking also to China and all that nonsense, whereas this idiot doesn't understand that parking comes under the purview of the CMC and they need to, they are the ones who are the enforcer, and the CMC is with the current opposition. And do you think economically thinking, whether is that feasible?
Let me put it this way, Mahieash. You see, there is nothing called free lunch. Somebody has to pay for it.
Yes.
You may get it free and I will eat it nicely, but somebody else has paid for it, and that's why I'm getting it free. When you say free education, when you say free health, when you say free whatever, it means that the government has paid, which means the people have paid. That is why I'm getting that free as the recipient. So that round trip has to be understood very, very, very carefully. The second part of it is, when you progress as a country and when your per capita incomes improve, we got to understand that some items we shouldn't be expecting free as well.
True.
You have to admit that certain things we have to be paying reasonable prices. Now I'll give you one example. Now take Sri Lanka. We have a per capita income of $3,682 per annum. Now with that per capita income, we pay for diesel 60 cents. 60 US cents is our price. According to the pump prices, at the pump we pay 60 US cents per diesel litre. Now in India, India's per capita income is only $1,980, which is about roughly half of our diesel price. But India's diesel price at the pump station is double that of Sri Lanka. They pay $1.22.
Sure.
So for a country which has a per capita income of 1,900 odd, the Indian citizens pay $1.22, whereas Sri Lankans have a per capita income of about 3,800 and we pay 60 cents. And yet we say it's not enough, we want less. Now this is the type of mentality that we need to sometimes wrap around our heads, because we got to understand that certain things, if you give it free forever, you cannot make ends meet.
There are a class of people, or there is a part of the society which really needs support.
Absolutely,
in
no doubt about that.
But then there are people who pretty much can take care of themselves, and they're not doing it, and they're not pulling their weight to help this nation, because what they don't realize is if they do that, it like full circle comes back to them, because that's how it helps them. There are two things I need to talk about taxation and also another accusation made by the opposition. I want to get your response, but before that, let's take a short commercial break. You're watching Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank, Ajith Nivaard Cabraal. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank, Ajith Nivaard Cabraal. Governor, I don't want to waste a lot of time on this, but I just want your quick response. Another accusation made by the opposition is, you sold gold holdings, and that's how you liquidate it, and you got the money, and all that nonsense is going on. What exactly is your response to that?
I'll try and make it as brief as possible. At the end of 2009, we had only $82 million worth of gold. Then by 2014, we had $892 million worth of gold. Nobody asked how did that happen. Right? I wish they had, because I would have been able to tell them. Now, we did have a liquidation of certain holdings, but that is part of the reserve management. Now, when you talk about the reserve of the central bank has a team of people who manage that, and depending on the liquidity, the profitability needs, the need to have certain debts being paid at a certain time, we arrange our resources in such a way so that we meet all those payments. Gold is just like any other reserve item in our total portfolio. Yeah. We have dollars, we have yen, we have Chinese yuan, we have euro. Same way we have gold as well. So gold can be converted into dollars, dollars can be converted into yen. Yeah. So that kind of arrangements happen all the time.
Well,
so
that's
your
job.
That's the job, and that's what people do all the time at the central bank.
Exactly.
So just because our holdings of gold comes down, which means that holdings of dollars may have gone up, or the holdings of euro may have gone up.
It's not that something you're doing.
Yeah, and then also it is done in a scientific manner. And there is no big deal. Tomorrow, if somebody says, let's go and buy more gold, we can. But it is not done in that fashion. It is done in a fashion that it is done in a scientific manner, so that we take all our needs into consideration, and then only it is done.
Prior to being the governor, you were in a ministerial position and more or less about the economy, and there were certain challenges you had in terms of reviving new projects and bringing them here into Sri Lanka. So you got off from that seat and came to a difficult seat. So now as the governor of the central bank, you pretty much have to give the confidence to the people of this country, the business community, the investors, the international investors. It is pretty much what you're saying. You're like Elon Musk in Sri Lanka, because whatever you say creates some kind of a repercussion in the markets. So what exactly is your message for the next 2 years, next 5 years? Because if there are people watching right now who want to understand where economically is this country heading, we've been having accusations, you can't pay this, you can't do that, you're going down the gutter, all that nonsense is being said on one side, but you are the key person who's responsible, one of the key persons who are responsible to ensure that it does not happen that way. And one good thing, what I'm really glad to hear from the governor himself, is that you all are doing something about it. You all are not just sitting there like one of the people, one of your predecessors who sat there and stole one of the biggest scams that occurred in Sri Lanka occurred in that. It's like actually the crime scene that you went back into. Right now, what exactly is the message you have to the public?
I will say we have several priorities. One is stability. Right now, we are stabilizing the economy. And to stabilize the economy, we take certain steps to ensure that our external sector is stabilized, that our fiscal sector is stabilized, the monetary sector is stabilized, to ensure that we have a path which is clear. That's why we have set out a roadmap and we are following that. The second is we need to have growth as well. Without growth, you will find that no economy can progress. You have to have growth. So it was challenged quite seriously with the advent of COVID. But now that we are coming out of that situation, Mahieash, we are now making sure that the growth also comes back. While that is taking shape, growth as well as stability, we got to ensure that we provide the space for investment to take place. Because it is only with investment that growth as well as all these other parts of the economy will fit into the right grooves. So to make the investment happen, we need to see that our macro fundamentals are made stable. That's a vital part. If we have a rupee which is floating around and nobody knows where it is going to end, nobody will start investing. If they don't know the direction of our interest rates, they won't invest. If they don't understand the philosophy of the government that they would honor its debts, people won't invest. People will be saying, let's wait and see. So to get them out of the wait and see syndrome, we have to ensure that we give the confidence, that we give stability, we give them a message that it is the clear thing. So I'm giving that message. I'm saying we have committed ourselves to a plan, we are doing that, please invest with us, come back to Sri Lanka and be a part of this journey. Right now, those who come in will enjoy a certain benefit because we find that some of these investments are at depressed levels, so they can make a additional benefit out of that. So if they come in at this time, they will make that benefit. We would like them to come, and hopefully if they take that message seriously and come into Sri Lanka, they will do well, the country will do well, and as a people and as a nation, we'll all do well.
At the end of 2021, you promised 3.5 billion at the coffers in terms of foreign reserves, and you delivered that. 2022, what's your prediction and projection for that? We
believe that we would be able to have at least 4 months of imports, which will be roughly over $6 billion, and we are working towards that diligently. And I think even after settling all these debts, we would be able to achieve that. And we are working towards that, which means that is the most important part of this equation, where you commit yourself and then you make sure that all your resources are harnessed towards delivering that. And you can be sure that I'm also a guy, when I set my mind to something, I pursue that. It's not going to be idle banter. It will be pursued with diligence and with commitment, and we will do that. You have delivered, so there's nothing to talk about. You've said it, you've done it, and that's one of the things that this government, it's a common thing that the whole government shares. When the government says they'll do it, they will definitely do it. It's just that the people of this country needs to have a bit of trust in you, trust in the people that they elected. They all didn't come and sit here by force. They all were elected officials of this nation. One more thing very quickly before we end, taxation. The President has clearly said, I'm not going to tax the people to dry in order to sort out the other mess, like what the Hapalne did. Every single thing, even if you fart, you'll be taxed. That's what their philosophy was. What exactly is this government's philosophy? Are you going to go back into, very tiresome, very, people-oriented taxing system where you're going to take every single thing out of them? The last budget was very clear that other than a one-off taxation which had to be introduced in order to ensure that the COVID-related expenditure was managed, we didn't touch the tax system unduly. So as a result, that there was a clear message of continuity of the tax policy, which is very essential for long-term investors. As you know, many of the investors who come into Sri Lanka, they want to have consistency with regard to tax policies as well as consistency with regard to any policy. So that's why we were very keen that we don't disturb that overall principle, and that has been done. And in the worst of times, if that could be done and the government could manage that, then in the better times it should happen. So that's the message that I would like to give them.
Governor of the Central Bank, Ajith Nivaard Cabraal, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for coming. You should continuously do this, because not per se, I think in all mediums possible, because people of this country, especially the younger generation, needs to understand the monetary policies of this country, the fiscal policy, the economic policy, because without understanding is why they go and scream the way they do, and that is vital that these conversations occur. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
For taking time and coming here and talking to us. Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure, in case you could not catch this program live, go back to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Derana English, and also have a conversation with us on Facebook, facebook.com/GetRealDerana. Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Make sure that you continuously stay positive and test negative. I'll see you next time. Good night.
So tell me now, when every star falls from the sky and every last heart in the world breaks, oh, hold me now. When every ship is going down, I don't fear nothing when I hear you say, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. When every star falls from the sky and every last heart in the world breaks, it's gonna be okay. When every ship is going down, I don't fear nothing when I hear you say, it's gonna be okay.